You're standing in complete darkness. The only light comes from a tallow candle 2 stories above you, flickering through a gap no wider than your arm. You can't see the sky. You haven't seen it since you entered this street 20 minutes ago. The buildings lean so far over the lane that their upper floors nearly kiss. Somewhere above, laundry drips. You hear it hitting the stones. You hear voices, dozens of them, layered and competing. A man shouts about fish. A woman argues over rent. Children scream in a language you can't place. Your shoulder brushes brick, then wood, then something wet you don't want to identify. You're walking through the most densely packed square mile in England, and this is just Tuesday. This is London in the late 1600s. Not the London of monuments or palaces, the other London, the one where 100,000 people are crammed into a space that was supposed to hold 30,000. A city swollen beyond its medieval walls, spilling into liberties and suburbs, packing tighter and tighter until the infrastructure starts to bend. You're here to understand what it actually felt like to live inside that density, not the grand history, the mechanics, the compromises, the things people just accepted because there was no alternative. We're going to move through this place the way its residents did, street by street, system by system, and by the end you'll understand how a city this crowded managed to function at all, or if it even did. It's just after dawn. You're near Cheapside, one of the major arteries cutting through the old city. Even here, where the street is wide enough for carts, the buildings press in. Most are timber-framed, 3 or 4 stories tall, each floor jutting out further than the one below. They call it jettying. It maximizes interior space without taking up more ground, which means at street level you're walking through permanent twilight. The top floors block the sun. They block the rain too, which sounds useful until you realize it also traps the smell. And the smell is immediate. You don't adjust to it, it just becomes the baseline. Human waste, animal waste, rotting food, smoke from sea coal, the sour tang of brewing, the metallic edge of slaughterhouses operating 2 streets over. There's no sewage system. Most houses have a cesspit in the yard or cellar. When it fills, you pay someone to empty it. If you can't afford that, it overflows into the street, into the shared well, into the neighbor's foundation. You're moving east now toward the river. The street's narrow. Every 20 feet an alley splits off. Some have names. St. Olave's Court, Maiden Lane. Others are just gaps between buildings, unnamed and unmapped, used by people who have lived here long enough to know the shortcuts. You take one. It's barely 3 feet wide. The walls on either side are damp. Moss grows where the sun never reaches. Halfway down, you step over a child sleeping against the brickwork. You don't wake him. No one else does either. This is how people navigate the city. Not by main roads, but by threading through the gaps. Because the main roads are clogged, carts hauling goods from the docks, livestock being driven to Smithfield, sedan chairs carrying anyone wealthy enough to avoid walking, beggars working the bottlenecks, peddlers selling everything from pies to patent medicines. If you tried to cross London in a straight line during daylight, it would take you 3 hours. So you learn the alleys. You learn which courtyards connect. You learn which taverns have back doors that open onto different streets. You emerge onto Thames Street. The river is 15 feet below you, hidden behind a wall of wharves and warehouses, but you can hear it. The slap of water against wood, the creak of cranes, voices shouting in Dutch, French, Portuguese. London's port is the economic engine of the city, and it runs on a supply chain that depends entirely on the Thames. Every day, hundreds of lighters and barges ferry goods upriver from the big merchant ships anchored in deeper water. Grain, coal, timber, wine, tobacco, everything the city consumes comes through this corridor, and the city consumes constantly. 100,000 people need to eat, which means London requires roughly 14,000 tons of food per year just to stay alive. Most of it comes from the surrounding countryside, but the logistics are brutal. Grain arrives by barge from East Anglia. Livestock is driven in on foot from as far as Wales. Vegetables come from market gardens in Southwark and Spitalfields. Fish is sold at Billingsgate before the sun is fully up because it won't last the day. You're walking through Billingsgate now. It's barely 7 in the morning and the market is already chaos. Fish laid out on tarps, eels in barrels, oysters sold by the sack, women with baskets balanced on their heads, men gutting cod on makeshift tables. The ground is slick with fish guts and riverweed. Gulls dive at scraps. You watch a child, maybe 6 years old, darting between the stalls, grabbing what she can. No one stops her. There's too much movement, too many people. Theft only matters if you get caught. The scale of the markets is what surprised me. Not just Billingsgate, every neighborhood has one. Leadenhall for meat, Newgate for grain, Covent Garden for produce. And they operate daily because there's no refrigeration. If you want to eat, you go to the market. If you want to sell, you go to the market. The entire food system is visible. It happens in public at street level where everyone can see it succeed or collapse. Water is a different problem. Most of London's water comes from the Thames, which is also where the city dumps its waste. So drinking river water directly is a risk. The wealthy avoid it. They buy water from conduits, public fountains fed by springs outside the city. Or they pay water carriers, men and women who haul buckets door to door. A gallon costs a penny. If you're poor, you drink from the river anyway, or from wells that may or may not be contaminated. There's no testing. You just hope. The new river company changed this somewhat. It's a private venture that diverts clean water from Hertfordshire into the city through a man-made channel. By the late 1600s, it's supplying parts of the city with piped water, but only parts, and only if you can afford the connection fee. Most people can't, so they keep using wells, they keep using the Thames, they keep getting sick. You're moving north now, away from the river. The streets climb. The air changes, less fish, more smoke. You're passing through an area dense with workshops. Shoemakers, tailors, coopers, chandlers, every trade clusters together, partly for efficiency, partly because the guilds enforce it. If you're a blacksmith, you work near other blacksmiths. You buy from the same suppliers. You compete for the same customers. And your apprentices live above the shop, sometimes 6 or 8 to a room. Housing is the calculation everyone makes. A single room in a tenement costs about 2 shillings a week. That's nearly half of what a laborer earns. So people double up. Families take in lodgers. Apprentices sleep in workshops. Entire households share beds in shifts, one group sleeping while the other works. It's not unusual for a building to house 30 people across 3 floors. The ground floor is a shop. The upper floors are subdivided into rooms barely large enough for a bed and a chest. You're inside one now. The ceiling is so low you can't stand upright. There's a straw mattress on the floor, a cracked jug in the corner, a single window, but it doesn't open. The air is stale and thick. This is where a family of 5 lives. The father works as a porter at the docks. The mother sews piecework at home. The children are sent out to beg or sell whatever they can scavenge. The rent is paid weekly. If they miss a payment, they're evicted by Friday. It's easy to forget that most people in this city live one bad week away from homelessness. There's no safety net, no unemployment insurance. If you get sick, you can't work. If you can't work, you can't pay rent. If you can't pay rent, you end up in the streets, or in a parish workhouse, or dead. You're walking through Smithfield now. It's mid-morning. The livestock market is in full operation. Cattle, sheep, pigs, hundreds of them penned in temporary enclosures, waiting to be sold and slaughtered. The noise is overwhelming, animals bellowing, drovers shouting, the crack of sticks on flesh. The ground is trampled into thick mud mixed with manure. You step carefully. Your boots sink an inch with every step. This is where the city's meat comes from. Live animals driven in from the countryside, sold here, then slaughtered in nearby shambles. The blood and offal are dumped into open drains that flow toward the Fleet River, which flows into the Thames. The system works as long as the drains don't clog. When they do, the waste backs up into the streets, into basements, into wells. Control in a city this dense is mostly about managing thresholds. How much waste can the drains handle before they overflow? How many people can live in a building before it collapses? How much food can the markets move before prices spike? The city operates at the edge of those thresholds constantly, and occasionally it crosses them. You're heading west now toward Fleet Street. The crowd thickens, not just residents but people flowing in from the suburbs, Clerkenwell, Shoreditch, Whitechapel. These are the liberties, areas outside the old city walls where regulations are looser and rents are cheaper. They've grown explosively. Thousands of people who work in the city but can't afford to live in it. Every morning they walk in. Every evening they walk out. The bridges and gates become bottlenecks, especially London Bridge, the only crossing over the Thames until Westminster Bridge is built decades later. London Bridge is its own small city. Shops line both sides. Houses rise above them. At the center there's a chapel. At the southern end, traders' heads are displayed on pikes. You cross it slowly, pressed on all sides by bodies. The bridge sways slightly under the weight. You don't think about it. Everyone else is moving forward, so you do too. On the south bank, Southwark opens up. This is where the rules bend further. Theaters, bear-baiting pits, brothels, taverns that stay open past curfew. The city authorities have limited power here. The Bishop of Winchester technically controls parts of it, but enforcement is inconsistent. So Southwark becomes the place people go when they want to escape oversight, or when they have no other options. You're back across the river now, moving through the neighborhoods north of Cheapside. St. Giles, Holborn. The density here is suffocating. Streets so narrow two people can barely pass. Buildings so poorly maintained they lean at angles that seem structurally impossible. Entire blocks of housing built without permits, thrown up fast to meet demand, already decaying. And then you realize the scale. This isn't a neighborhood. This is most of the city. Block after block of overcrowded, poorly built, barely regulated housing. Streets that were designed for a medieval population now handling triple the load. A water system that was never meant to serve this many people. A food supply chain that works only because it's constantly in motion. You stop in a small courtyard. There's a pump in the center. A dozen people are waiting to use it. A woman fills a bucket, then another, then a third. She'll carry them back to her building, probably up 3 flights of stairs. She'll do this twice a day, every day, because there's no alternative. What strikes you isn't the hardship, it's the routine. No one looks surprised, no one complains. This is just how the city works. You adapt, you find your rhythm, you learn which streets flood when it rains. You learn which wells taste cleanest. You learn how to move through a crowd without losing your footing. And you accept that the city will never be comfortable. It will only be survivable. The sun is setting now. You're near St. Paul's, the old cathedral, the one that will burn in a few decades. The streets are emptying slightly, not because people are going home, but because they're shifting locations. Taverns are filling. Cookshops are selling pies to people who can't afford their own fires. Night soil men are starting their rounds, emptying cesspits under cover of darkness because it's illegal to do it during the day. You think about what you've seen. A city functioning at a density that seems unsustainable, and maybe it is. Maybe every system here is one failure away from collapse, or maybe this is just what cities do. They push past their limits. They absorb more people than they were designed for. They improvise. They survive. You don't know how long London can keep doing this. Neither does anyone else living here. They just keep waking up, keep walking through the alleys, keep buying water, keep paying rent, keep moving. And somewhere above you, in the gap between two leaning buildings, the sky is finally visible. Just a strip of it, dark blue fading to black. You wonder if anyone ever looks up.